married to a drug dealer. Have you ever met that one person? That one person who's so extreme in everything they do? They can't have one piece of chocolate. Oh no, they have to eat the whole box. Can't just sip on wine. Be conservative. Absolutely not. Has to have it all. I was that person. I am that type of person. I have to be one or the other. I can't be conservative. I can't be just have one piece of chocolate. No, I'm going to eat the whole box in one day. I could never just sip wine and be conservative. No. When I had alcohol, I would drink it all until I couldn't walk anymore, and I was so drunk I would pass out. There was this man that had 2 sons. He lived on a farm and he had 2 sons. And one son, he did everything right. He worked the farm and stayed home, did what he was supposed to do. The other son was more like me. He wanted everything and he wanted it now. So he went to his father and he said, "Give me my inheritance. Give me all that you have for me. I want it now." So his father said, "Okay." And he gave him his inheritance. And that young man went to a city. He partied. He gave his money away. He lived however he wanted to live. The other son stayed home and did everything right. He worked the farm. He was there every day with the father. He walked the walk. He talked the talk. He knew all the Christian jargon. He knew what to say, when to say it, how to say it. But you know, if the truth were told, both of those boys' hearts were wrong, in the wrong place. I was like the first son. I went to the city. I left my parents' house. My parents were Christian and had rules and regulations, had Bible studies. And when I was living there, I loved those things. My parents were good people and they taught us well, and I loved those things. But then when it was time for me to go, I went full force into the world. When I decided to walk in the darkness, I dove in. I drank the drink. I smoked. I did the drugs. I partied hard. I went full force, just like that first son did. When the first son finally ran out of money, his friends left him. Because when you have money and you have alcohol and drugs, you have a lot of friends. But when those things run out, the friends run out too. And that's what happened to that first son. Then he found himself with nothing. So he started thinking, my father would never want me back. Not after how I am. I wasted everything that my father gave me. Sort of like me. Excuse me. I grew up in a Christian home. I knew the Lord, but I went full force on the enemy's camp. Why would my father want me back after I spent all that time with his enemy? I learned the talk and the walk of the enemy. Why would my father want me back? And that first son, he knew that safety and provision would be back in his father's house, back in his father's camp, but he was afraid the father wouldn't want him back. He came so low, he had no food, no friend, no shelter, no nothing. So he started practicing what he would say to his father. I'm so sorry, Father. I went so far from you. Just let me come and sleep in the barn with the servants. Just let me back. Just let me back to the farm, Lord. Just let me come back. He even practiced what he was going to say on the way home. He knew he found himself in a mess. He was desperate. He was broken. Not like that first son. That first son was at home, doing the work, talking the talk, spending the money. Oh, he knew he would get an inheritance, and he was willing to wait on it. The problem with the first son, his heart never got right. He never fell, that's great. But his heart wasn't right either. He knew he was going to get the money, and he had the suit. He knew how to talk to people to get what he wanted. Not like that first son that found himself in a mess and he was broken. That first son, the prodigal son, you can read about him in the book of Luke, chapter 15. That prodigal son, that's my story. I was the prodigal son. I left the house. And when I came back, I was broken, and I fell on my face, and I begged the Father to forgive me, and He did. Of course He did. He was waiting on me out by the road. He put a robe on my back and a ring on my finger, just like He did on the prodigal son. When I came back to the house, I saw the other sons still in the church where they were at the beginning. Still doing the same work, still talking the same talk, still wearing the same suit. But I looked at them, and you could tell their heart ain't right. A lot of times those people who grew up in the church, they don't love the Father. They love the walk, the talk, the money. Be careful if you grew up in the church. Good for you, you didn't fall like I did, like the prodigal son. But examine your heart. Is your heart for the Father, or for the money, or for the walk, the talk, the people, the work, the ministry? There's a verse in the Bible that's scary. You never want to hear it. It says, "Depart from me, I never knew you." A lot of people who grew up in the church, grew up in the Father's house, their heart ain't right with God. They're just there for the walk. Those are the type of person who are in danger of hearing that at the end. I never knew you, depart from me. Be careful. Come to the Father if you grew up in the church, or if you're like me and had to have the whole box of chocolates. Come to the Father. Examine your heart. Fall on your knees. Come to the end of your rope and call on Jesus. He's the only thing that can save us.